Welcome to my channel, The Good Book Tales. In today's video, we dive into one of the most intense and emotional stories of sibling rivalry ever told, the story of Jacob and Esau. Imagine being born into a world where your greatest enemy is your own twin. Not because of something you did, but because of destiny, because of choices made before you could even speak. This isn't just a story about two brothers. It's about jealousy, deception, heartbreak, and the struggle for identity and blessing. And it all begins in the quiet desert hills, where an ordinary family becomes the center of a divine plan. Isaac and Rebekah had waited years for children. They prayed, they hoped, and finally, their prayers were answered. But even before the twins were born, something strange was happening. Rebekah could feel a struggle inside her womb. It was as if a war was already raging between the two unborn children. When she asked God about it, his answer was mysterious and unsettling. Two nations are in your womb, and the older will serve the younger. That one sentence would set the course of their entire lives and shape history. Esau was the firstborn. He was rugged, wild, and strong, a skilled hunter, the kind of man who thrived in the open fields. He was his father's favorite. Jacob, on the other hand, was quieter. He stayed close to home, more thoughtful, more calculated. He was Rebekah's favorite. From the very beginning, their personalities clashed. But underneath the surface, something deeper was brewing, a rivalry that wasn't just personal, but spiritual. The first major crack appeared over something as simple as food. One day, Esau came home starving from the fields. Jacob was cooking stew. Esau begged for a bowl, and Jacob, always thinking ahead, saw his chance. He said, "Sell me your birthright." At that moment, Esau made a choice that would haunt him forever. Driven by hunger, he traded his future, his birthright as the firstborn, for a bowl of lentil stew. It seemed small at the time, but it wasn't. It was the beginning of a betrayal that would shake their family to its core. The birthright meant more than just family tradition. It was tied to inheritance, honor, and most importantly, the covenant blessing of Abraham passed down through Isaac. Jacob now held that future, and he wasn't done yet. What came next would push the brothers past the point of no return. A plan was forming, one that would involve lies, disguises, and heartbreak. Their mother would play a role. Their father would be deceived. And when it all came crashing down, one brother would run for his life, while the other would be left in furious despair. But this is just the beginning. The full betrayal hasn't even happened yet. A blessing meant for one will fall into the hands of another, and the consequences will ripple for generations. Will Jacob's cleverness win him favor, or will Esau's anger destroy everything? Stick around, because what happens next will leave you questioning trust, fate, and the true meaning of family. Jacob and Esau may have shared the same womb, but their lives couldn't have been more different. From the very beginning, the tension between them only grew stronger. Esau was everything a firstborn son was expected to be: bold, physical, and confident. He was a man of the wild, often returning home with game on his shoulders and the smell of the earth on his clothes. His father, Isaac, loved that about him. There was something proud and strong in Esau that reminded Isaac of the days of old, of God's promises, of the strength needed to carry on the legacy of Abraham. But Jacob was different. He didn't seek attention. He didn't boast or hunt or roam the fields. He stayed close to home, learned how to listen, how to read a moment, how to think steps ahead. He was clever, almost too clever. There was a quiet intensity about him. He wasn't strong in the traditional sense, but he had something else, a hunger. Not for food, but for the future. A craving for the blessing, the birthright, the power that came with being first. And maybe he knew, deep down, that it was never really meant for Esau. The house was divided. Isaac leaned toward Esau, proud of his oldest. Rebekah, however, saw something more in Jacob. Maybe it was mother's instinct, maybe something divine. She never forgot God's words during her pregnancy. The older will serve the younger. It echoed in her mind every time she looked at her sons. Maybe that's why she began to protect Jacob more fiercely. Maybe that's why she was willing to risk everything when the time came. Years passed. Esau grew stronger, Jacob grew smarter, and the invisible line between them thickened. Esau still held his father's love, but Jacob now held the birthright. A silent war had begun, and no one really saw it, not even Isaac. But it was there, in the silence at dinner, in the stolen glances, in the quiet tension that lingered in the tent each night. And then came the moment that would change everything. Isaac, now old and nearly blind, called for Esau. His voice was weak, but his words were clear. He wanted to bless Esau before he died. The blessing wasn't just a few kind words, it was sacred. It was everything. And Jacob? He wasn't about to let his brother have it without a fight. What he did next would take deception to a whole new level and break the heart of a family. But we're not there yet. The stage is set, the trap is near, and the blessing hangs in the balance. Isaac's time was coming to an end. His sight was nearly gone and his voice had grown faint, but his memory was still sharp and he hadn't forgotten the responsibility resting on him. The blessing of Abraham, the sacred promise passed down from his father. He knew he had to pass it on, and in his mind, Esau was the rightful heir. So he called Esau to his side and said, "Go out into the field, hunt some, prepare me a meal the way I like it. Then I will bless you before I die." It was supposed to be a private moment between father and son, but someone else was listening. Rebekah heard everything, and her heart raced. She couldn't let Esau get that blessing. She remembered God's words. She remembered the choice Esau made when he sold his birthright for stew. She believed Jacob was the one meant to carry the promise. But there was no time to reason with Isaac, no chance for a second opinion. So she acted. What she planned next wasn't just bold, it was dangerous. Jacob was hesitant. He knew the risk. His father might curse him instead of bless him if the lie was uncovered. But Rebekah pushed forward. She disguised Jacob in Esau's clothes, covered his arms with goat skin to mimic his brother's rough hair, and sent him in with a meal that looked just right. Jacob's heart was pounding as he stepped into the tent. He could hear Isaac's shaky breath. He knew this moment would change everything. One wrong word, one doubt, and it would all fall apart. Inside the tent, a battle of trust and deception had just begun, and outside, Esau was still unaware, hunting in the open fields, carrying only good intentions, and no idea of what was about to be stolen from him. Jacob stepped carefully into the dim tent, the scent of the stew drifting through the air, mixing with the heavy silence. Isaac lay still, his eyes clouded with blindness, but his other senses sharp. As Jacob approached, Isaac stirred and asked, "Who are you, my son?" The question hung in the air. Jacob paused, heart thudding in his chest. One wrong answer, and everything would fall apart. Slowly, he replied, "I am Esau, your firstborn." The lie came out shaky, but Isaac nodded slowly. Still, Isaac wasn't fully convinced. He reached out and touched Jacob's hands, feeling the goat hair covering his skin. It felt like Esau, but something wasn't right. "The voice is Jacob's," Isaac muttered, "but the hands are Esau's." Suspicion flickered in his tone. Jacob stood frozen, every muscle tense. Would the disguise hold? Would his father see through it? Isaac asked again, "Are you really my son Esau?" And again, Jacob answered yes. It was a moment heavy with uncertainty, the final step before the blessing was spoken. Isaac ate the food, drank the wine, and finally, after a long pause, he stretched out his hand and blessed Jacob. It wasn't just a blessing, it was the blessing, filled with promises of abundance, leadership, and the legacy of Abraham. And as the words left Isaac's mouth, the blessing passed, not to Esau, but to Jacob. Outside, the winds shifted. The tent was still, but the world had changed. And just then, the sound of footsteps approached. Esau was returning. He carried the food he had hunted and prepared with his own hands, full of excitement and trust. He had no idea what had just taken place inside that tent, or how deeply that betrayal would cut when he found out. Esau stepped into the tent with a proud smile, his hands still warm from the hunt, his heart full of expectation. He laid the food before his father, certain that this moment, the blessing, would seal his place as the rightful heir. But Isaac didn't respond with joy. Instead, he stiffened. Confused, Esau repeated himself, "Rise, my father, and eat, so that you may bless me." Isaac turned slowly, his face pale, his body trembling. The confusion in his eyes shifted to fear. "Who are you?" he whispered. Esau's smile faded. "I am your son, your firstborn, Esau." A silence fell over the tent, so heavy it felt like time itself paused. Isaac trembled violently. His voice broke as he said, "Then who brought me food before you came? I already blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed." Esau's eyes widened. The truth hit like a blow to the chest. Someone had been there before him. Someone had stolen the moment he'd waited his whole life for. The cry that came out of Esau was raw and full of anguish. "Bless me too, my father," he begged, his voice shaking. But Isaac, broken and shaken, could only repeat the truth. The blessing was given. It couldn't be undone. Esau, the rightful firstborn, had been deceived. Jacob had taken everything, not just the birthright, but now the blessing too. Esau wept, but then the sorrow turned. In that same breath, pain twisted into rage. "Isn't he rightly named Jacob?" he shouted. "He's cheated me these 2 times. First my birthright, now my blessing." And that's when something shifted. The rivalry that once simmered quietly had now exploded into something dangerous. Esau looked Isaac in the eyes and said something that sent a chill through the air. "When the days of mourning for my father are over, I will kill my brother." Rebekah overheard. Her heart dropped. She had never seen Esau like this. His voice wasn't just angry, it was serious. He meant every word. The family was now on the edge of destruction. Isaac was fading. Esau was burning with revenge. And Jacob, the one who had received the blessing, now had a price on his head. The plan had worked, but at what cost? Everything was unraveling, and no one knew what would happen next. Rebekah didn't waste a moment. She rushed to Jacob, her voice urgent, her face pale. "Your brother Esau is planning to kill you," she said, trembling. Jacob froze, not out of guilt but fear. He had won the blessing, but now his life was at risk. Rebekah made the decision for him. "Go to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay there until Esau cools down. Then I'll send for you." Jacob didn't argue. That same night, under the cover of darkness, he packed quickly and left. No goodbyes, no explanations, just a brother fleeing for his life, carrying a stolen blessing and a heavy heart. As Jacob crossed the lonely wilderness, everything he had gained now felt like a burden. The blessing came with a cost. He had left behind a broken family, a furious brother, and a dying father. He didn't know what lay ahead, only that the road to Laban's house would be long and full of uncertainty. But as the night grew colder, Jacob lay down to rest. With only a rock for a pillow, he drifted into sleep. And that's when something unexpected happened. In his dream, Jacob saw a ladder reaching from earth to heaven, and angels moving up and down. At the top stood God himself, and he spoke, not in anger, not in judgment, but with promise. "I am the Lord, the God of Abraham and Isaac. I will give you this land. I am with you. I will not leave you until I have done what I promised." Jacob woke with awe. Despite all his deceit, God had not abandoned him. The blessing wasn't just a trick, it was real. And now the God of his father was reaching out to him personally. But just as the road ahead seemed a little clearer, the twist came. What Jacob didn't know was that his time with Laban would bring even more challenges, ones that would make his deception against Esau feel small in comparison. The deceiver was about to be deceived, and his journey of survival was about to turn into a lesson of transformation. The blessing may have set the story in motion, but what Jacob would face next would truly shape the man he was meant to become. The rivalry wasn't over. It was just the beginning of something even deeper. Jacob's journey was far from easy. In the house of Laban, he would face years of hard labor, deception, and emotional struggle. The trickster would be tricked, working 7 years for Rachel, only to be given Leah instead. He would work another 7, just to marry the one he loved. The weight of his past decisions followed him everywhere. Yet through all the hardship, Jacob began to change. Slowly, the man who once schemed his way into blessings started to learn patience, humility, and faith. It wasn't quick, and it wasn't easy, but over time, Jacob began to understand the value of surrendering control and letting God shape his future. Years passed. Jacob became a husband, a father, and a wealthy man. But one thing still haunted him: Esau. The thought of facing his brother again brought fear, regret, and uncertainty. When the time came for Jacob to return home, he didn't know what to expect. Would Esau still want revenge? Would this end in another fight or forgiveness? As Jacob approached, he sent gifts ahead, trying to soften the meeting. He bowed low, trembling with every step. But what happened next was something he never expected. Esau ran to him, not with anger, but with open arms. He hugged his brother, and together they wept. The years of pain, bitterness, and distance melted in that moment. Esau had forgiven him. The rivalry had ended not with violence, but with grace. The story of Jacob and Esau is more than just a tale of sibling rivalry. It's a powerful reflection of real human emotions: jealousy, betrayal, fear, and reconciliation. It reminds us that even in our darkest mistakes, there is room for growth, for healing, and for redemption. Jacob received the blessing, yes, but it wasn't the blessing alone that changed him. It was the journey, the pain, the lessons, the forgiveness. In the end, what truly mattered wasn't who won or lost the birthright, but how two brothers found their way back to each other. And maybe that's what blessings are really about. Not status, not power, but restored relationships and second chances. Thanks for watching this powerful story of Jacob and Esau. If this touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Good Book Tales for more inspiring stories.